We're like, hello, everybody.
Hey everyone. I'm delighted to welcome Gwyn GB, who we're having a nice chat about alcohol with as we were waiting to go live. She's just going to tell us a little bit about herself and her book.
Yes, so yeah, my name's Gwyn GB. So Gwyn Garfield Bennett. I write under both names actually, but for the purposes of crime and thrillers, etc., I'm Gwyn GB. Just released Preacher Boy, which you may have seen the competition in the group, which is a brand new crime series, which has been getting some great reviews, which is brilliant, thank goodness. I have been a writer all my life. I effectively started writing stories as soon as I could pick up a pen, and knew at a very early age that you can't actually become an author straight away. You need, you need a few things under the bridge and a bit of experience before you can really sort of write good books. So I asked my parents what I could do that involved writing, so to be a journalist. So that's what I did. I became a journalist. So I spent most of my career being a journalist, so writing, but I also wrote fiction in my spare time. I had an agent in London and nearly got a publishing deal, but didn't, and then all sorts of things happened, like my father died and stuff, so I stopped, and then eventually sort of picked it back up again a bit later. I published Islands, which is not crime fiction, it's an emotional suspense book. That's the one I published as Gwyn Garfield Bennett. Well, it says Gwyn GB, so that's wrong. Published that one in 2016, which did really well, became an Amazon top 10 bestseller, and then started publishing crime mystery novels as well. I have another series out, which is Lonely Hearts, which is this one, which is about female detective. But Harrison Lane had been in my head for a long time, and he is the protagonist of Preacher Boy and the whole series, and he's not a detective. I want to do something a bit different, so he's a little bit different than the norm. So that's kind of a potted history. And can I explain my huge barrel load of wine? It's not just wine, it's a spritzer, so just in case nobody thinks I am a total alcoholic.
You're in safe company in an author hat. My Sam might be carrying a mug, but it generally doesn't put coffee or tea in.
You're hiding yours, I'm not hiding mine, I'm just being blatant.
We're hiding ours on the basis that we work in education, but it's generally not like.
Okay, well, if you're an author, apparently you can do anything you like. We're supposed to be watched, aren't we? So it's all right.
Kelly says yes, I believe you. Do you want to tell us, before we get going into the books, because I have loads of questions about Harrison and Preacher Boy, a little bit about you and the other blonde plotters?
Yes, so Kelly Clayton and Deborah Carr are my two friends. So many moons ago, my husband's from Jersey. That's how we came to end up here. Unfortunately, we're not tax exiles. And we came here, and I wanted to find fellow writers. I kind of met people through the kids at school, but I didn't know anybody who was writing. So I set up a writing group and met loads of different people. But two of the people who I met were Kelly Clayton and Deborah Carr. And I eventually had to give up doing the group because I just didn't have the time to keep organising speakers and this, that, and the other. And the three of us sat down in the cafe one day, and Deb said, oh, we should join together and become the Blonde Plotters. Bang, that was it. And we've just been best friends ever since. We support each other while writing. If anybody is a writer, you understand the huge lows as well as the highs of being a writer. It's tough. There's so many times that one of us is helping the other one. We also support each other with information, and we also 2 years ago set up My VLF, which was the online literary festival, which won the Publishing Industry Award for New Startup as well as some other digital awards. Was doing brilliantly well, and then came the pandemic, which initially kind of seemed like yay, great, because everybody went online. There was no way for authors and publishers to publicize their books, so we did as much as we could to help people. But of course, what also happened was that everybody got online, like interviews like this. It suddenly became the norm. I remember when I was first doing the interviews for My VLF, and it helped because I had a broadcasting history. I used to have to send out an explanation sheet for what Zoom was. now everybody's Zooming. You know, Zoom has become part of our kind of vocabulary since the pandemic. So we kind of decided that my VLF had been leapfrogged, and we eventually closed it earlier on this year. But it had its purpose. It helped a lot of the authors and publishers throughout the pandemic. So and we had fun doing it.
Excellent. Oh, we've got loads of people saying hello.
Hello.
So T says hello. Sam says hello. She also says that her wine would not have lemonade.
It's soda water, actually, not lemonade.
But either she just would have had that bigger glass of wine.
Well, I'm telling you it's soda water anyway, but no, it is soda water. Soda water and white wine.
She also says she likes the name The Blonde Plotters. Sounds like fun. Kelly is here and she says she loved Preacher Boy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Which is very nice.
Yep. And so Kelly's also written crime books, but she's writing some historical fiction at the moment as well, which is we're all desperately waiting for her second one to come out. And Deb's, of course, is more of a romance writer and also historical fiction writer. So she's done brilliantly well. She writes for HarperCollins as well as being indie published as well.
I am super hoping that if Kelly Clayton is writing historical fiction, that's the next in the Fortune's Hostage series.
Exactly. They love it. People love it. Readers love it. And that's what we've been telling for ages. It's another one along that ilk. So we're all kind of waiting with bated breath for it.
I need book 2 in that series.
They are, Kelly. Told ya.
I have told her repeatedly.
Yep. I know. This is what I said to her. It was so popular when we did an interview with her on my VLF. It was incredibly popular. People love it. And of course, you know, the recent series with what's his name? Can't remember his name now. The hunk doing the historical thing. I can't remember what it's called now. That is kind of yes, Bridgerton. Thank you. That has kind of like two sips of wine. I'm off. That's kind of reawakened all that kind of stuff as well. So yeah, she needs to get that book out.
Let's go. We're going to work up to Preacher Boy. Let's talk about your other series first, because I read one of those and you scared the living
that was Home Help, which was the second. That was the second one after this one, because it had snakes in, but there's no snakes in too much. Snakes are just the murder method. So they don't have much of an appearance.
Enough to give me nightmares.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There was a little bit about the characters and stuff in there though, because it was really interesting. And again, another one where I felt like it was quite interesting. Like the characters were all quite interesting and different.
Yeah, I try not to kind of do the same as everybody else does. So Lonely Hearts is the first one in that series. So it basically follows two characters. So you're actually following be careful not to give anything away here. You're following the detective who is investigating a murder, and she's also investigating the stalker of a woman who's involved as well. And then there's a dating agency involved, and she uncovers what she thinks is a whole serial killer situation with the dating agency, and it builds, and you follow the character who's Rachel, who is being stalked. You follow her childhood as well, so it builds up through to where she is now, so it tells you a whole story of her childhood. And then Home Help, which is the one you read, which is the blue cover up there, which I'll get in a second, that one follows more of Claire, who is the detective's childhood to where she is now, so it's telling kind of both their backstories at the same time as running it. And then the third one, which is due out later this year, bangs them both together in the present, and they collide in a big way. So if you've read the end of Home Help, you know that there's kind of a little bit of a cliffhanger at the end of that, and it all has to kind of all come out in the wash, as my mother would say, in the third one, which is Death Bond.
Nice. So then moving on to Preacher Boy, which is great. Harrison is, although he's very muscly,
like muscles, yeah.
He's a really great character, and I think the world needs more books and not just standard kind of police procedurals in crime. So I like that you've taken it off into a really different sort of direction. with Harrison.
Yeah, I wanted, because we like police procedurals, but you kind of get a little bit bored of the same thing. And also, I didn't want yet another detective as the focus who's, you know, a drunkard, who's got broken marriage. It's just, you know, the same old, same old. I wanted to do something a bit different. And Harrison just kind of appeared to me, which most of my books tend to start with a character, and then the character suddenly dictates the actual plot. And he's a psychologist, but he's not just a psychologist. He's a ritualistic crime expert, and this is all to do with his own childhood. So he's a massive backstory, which gradually comes out. So his mother was murdered when he was younger. Well, they said it was suicide, but he believes she was murdered. And that has basically been his whole driving force throughout his life. So his whole thing is that he wants to unearth anybody who hides behind religion or spirituality to commit crimes. He thinks that, you know, people use fear and beliefs and spirituality to do these things and to make people fearful. And his whole thing is to kind of expose all that and do that. But he also has some other skills as well. That's kind of the book that explains it, the tracking, the complete guide to tracking. His stepfather, so he spent some time in Arizona with the Tohono Indians, who are Native American trackers who work with the Drugs Enforcement Agency in America. And so they're absolute expert trackers. And so Harrison, as a child, learned to track, and he uses that at every crime scene. So he's looking at all the signs in the crime scene, because it tells a story of what happened or what may have happened, and gives him a real picture of what may have gone on in a crime scene. So there's a lot more to him than just being, you know, a standard police detective, but he obviously works with the police, and there's two police characters in particular who feature in the books.
We'll get onto those, but before that, the Shadow Wolves, how did you find out about those?
I can't remember now how I came across them. I just doing research, I think, because I wanted him to be a tracker, and then I heard about these Native American trackers and found out more about them. And there are books about. There's even like documentaries about them, and they're incredible. So they literally go into the desert and follow the trails of these people that are coming across the borders, carrying. They usually carry like a load, a backpack of drugs on their backs, and they can catch fibers on bushes and tell, you know, from the footprints what they've been doing. They're incredible. And I like the fact that what I wanted with Harrison is I wanted him to, you know, we've got so many inner skills that we have as human beings that we don't use, and I wanted him to be in touch with that. So although his mother was very spiritual, although he's very kind of not skeptical of religion and spirituality, but he's actually very in touch with his own spirituality and his own kind of able to use his own inner self to look at things. And that's kind of what you use a lot when you're doing tracking. You're using all your senses. You're looking, you're listening, you're smelling, everything. So kind of wanted to make him a bit more than just like a, you know, detective that goes on a computer and looks somebody up.
Do you think you're onto a winner with a book when you're reading it and you want to go off and research?
Oh, good. Thank you.
Yourself? Like I was reading it going, I want to know more about this.
Well, I mean, at the very beginning, the first chapter, the DCI, Sandra Barker, actually tells the skeptical police officer to go and Google them, because he's skeptical of that Harris can actually tell, you know, how many people have been so and so and where they've been and what they've done and stuff. But he can see that.
Sam says, are there any misconceptions about tracking that you found during your research?
Are there any
misconceptions about tracking that you found during your research?
I don't know. There's misconceptions. I mean, I'm not an expert tracker myself, so it's hard to I don't go into too much detail, but I used obviously books like this, which are I've got a few books on tracking, so I'm looking at how they're teaching people to follow the signs. I think you have to really. It's blooming hard, I tried. I went on some dog walks with my dog, and I tried to kind of like look at the leaves and see where people had been, where the footmarks have been, and follow things. And it's very, very difficult. It's something that I think you have to work extremely hard at, and it's also something that even when you've got it and you can do it, you also have to keep practicing, which is one of the things that I say that Harrison has to do in book 2, which is The Horseman. He needs to keep practicing his skill. He can't. He's always fearful that, because he's living in London, he's always fearful that he's going to lose that ability to be able to see the signs.
And I think Harrison's kind of well balanced out by the sort of two police characters that are with him, because he comes across as quite, he's not spiritual overly, but he's very like clean living and things, isn't he?
He's very clean living, yeah.
Like he needs some people to balance him.
Yeah, he is, and you've got and again with DCI Sandra Barker, who is kind of like the boss. So many of the police, female police officers you see are these like ball breaking women who kind of don't have families, etc. Well, the reality is that a lot of women in the police force do have families. They may be able to be ball breakers, but they've got to be tough. But they also have a different side to them as well. And I wanted her to have a family, so I wanted her to be more, again, another three-dimensional character. I didn't want her to be this kind of one-dimensional woman that kind of a lot of times female police detectives seem to be portrayed as. And then there's Jack Salter, who initially is the complete skeptic about Harrison. He's a bit of a joker, gets forced to work with him, and clearly kind of does a flip round and realizes what he's like. But he also has problems of his own. And again, they're family issues. But again, I didn't want it to be like a marriage problem and stuff like that. So his home life problem is that his wife has postnatal depression, and he's having to deal with that. And being a police officer and having seen the results of what that can do to families is a particular stress on him. So he's kind of like trying to do his job really well, and also worrying about his wife and his son at home.
I think Jack is 100%, like hands down, my favourite.
Is he?
In the book, yeah.
Good. Well, I mean, he appears in The Horseman again. I'm going to have to work out a way. I'm just finishing off the next one, which is Dark Order. So he's in that too. So they feature in every single book in varying different degrees.
Because I feel like there's a story, and I don't know where I'm going with this, because I don't think we can give it away, where that's going to go over the books as a series, if that makes sense.
There is that, very much so.
It's going to carry on.
There's very much the elements of Harrison's childhood and what happened back then, which are going to be the whole kind of series, an arc over the series, which Jack gets involved in. He starts helping him to uncover, and there's some shockers coming. So yeah, there's lots which will just, each book will just give a little piece of a jigsaw, and they'll work through it, and as I say, Jack will help him work through them.
How much research did you have to go into on like religion and spirituality and things?
Oh God, there's
Satanism, isn't there?
Oh yeah. Well, I've got you look at my kind of thing. My husband wasn't very impressed with this, because apparently, if you've got the Satanic Bible, you're likely to be a serial killer or something. So I've got the Satanic Bibles and stuff like that, which are necessary requisites. I've got this one featured a lot in The Horseman. I did a lot of research for that. So The Horseman's less religion and more about folklore as well. and again, that's all part of the kind of spiritual beliefs that people had that fed into folklore in the past in Britain. The one I'm doing at the moment, which is Dark Order, has this kind of stuff going into it, and all this secret places, hidden sanctuaries. So there's tons of research you're doing all the time, online, in books. Unfortunately, due to lockdown, you know, I've been writing this series last year and this year, and so I haven't been able to do much traveling. So books and the internet have basically been most of my research. So I've chosen like the locations for the books, places that I already knew, so I could get a feel for places. But I'm going to have to start going out and traveling around a bit more soon to get some new locations. Hopefully, we will get back out and about very soon.
Fingers crossed. We've been joined by one of our members who's called Andrew.
Hi, Andrew.
He says hi, and he wants to know if your books are available on audio and in libraries.
Right, so they're available through libraries. They'll have to order them in. So Ingram Spark publishes them. It's not just on Amazon. Audio, I'd like to do audio. To do audio is very expensive as an indie author, so that's something I will be doing shortly, I hope. But that will be coming.
Kelly says, Gwyn, maybe talk about how you write, which is at supersonic speed, once you've worked out the plot, never known anyone write quicker or need less editing.
Well, thank you, Kelly. So I have to, it's quite frustrating when I'm working out plots. So, you know, there's some authors who will plan things out to the minute detail, other authors who will do what they call discovery writers or pantsers. They'll just go for it. I was always a planner. I found that easier. So I need to know where the story's going, particularly for things like mysteries and crime, because you've kind of got to set the clues, and you've got to have your different characters who need to be suspects, etc. So I find that a lot easier. I don't plan as much as I used to, so my planning's a lot looser. But I do need to know the plot. So, for example, with the one I was doing, which one I'm writing at the moment, it took me weeks to really get to wrestle with the plot in my head. But now I've got it, I will write, and it just flows. And again, that goes back to having spent, you know, having had a career as a writer, as a journalist. I've been writing every day all my life, so writing is easy. And then the other advantage I have, which Kelly was saying about editing, is that I'm a very tight writer. Because I wrote for broadcast writing has to be very tight. And I think a lot of the problem that new authors can face is their writing can be very verbose. They have a lot of excess and they have to do a lot of cutting. Whereas for me, because I was used to writing very tight for broadcast, it was a lot easier. So you'll find that my writing is very tight and to the point kind of thing.
Nice. David Monaghan Jones has joined. He says he found the traveling aspect fascinating. He may move to Jersey and join your club. He knows lots of good jokes and will bring wine.
Is he blonde?
I don't know. Maybe he'll answer us.
You want to be a blonde plotter, you've got to be blonde.
Or be willing to dye yourself blonde, maybe.
Yes, maybe, yes. Well, we're not all quite as natural as we'd like to be.
Someone who's coming up as face. Oh, he says he's grey.
Unfortunately, I think all three of us are a little bit grey underneath all as well.
Sam has said, pick me up on your way. Terrible dad jokes, but excellent wine is what she can bring to the table, and she can bleach her hair.
Good. Yep. We'll go with that one. Excellent.
Leslie says she's just joined, and she's been seeing the book and it looks interesting. Leslie, I think you'd probably quite enjoy it. Like, it's worth investigating.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, I mean, it's so I don't think people who don't write kind of realize how nerve-wracking it is when you first put out a book. No matter how many times you put one out, it's that nerve-wracking moment when, especially for a new character and a new series, to see whether or not people like it. It's like having, because I've been writing this for a year, so it's like having a very long pregnancy and suddenly presenting your baby to the world and saying, isn't he beautiful? Isn't he beautiful? Do you think he's beautiful? Is he okay? And just hoping that people don't say, oh my God, it's awful. He's so ugly. It's a really nerve-wracking moment to do that. And it's great when people give good feedback and you know, even if people do think it's awful, if it's constructive feedback, then that's great. That's fine, because then you can learn.
I think books are easier to give feedback about than babies.
Sorry?
I think books are easier to give feedback about than babies. Because
Yes.
all babies kind of come out looking slightly like a Smurf to begin with. And
I think everything about babies, whatever, haven't you? So yeah, I agree.
Whereas you can actually give an opinion about a book.
Yeah. No, I think you're quite right there. Yeah.
Simon said, what have you learned from writing that's helped you to progress with each book?
Learned from writing that's led me to?
Helped you to progress with each book.
Each book gets easier, absolutely. I think you kind of just get into a rhythm. I tend to edit as I go along, so I will, everybody has a different way, and I think it's really important that everybody, when you first start out writing, you kind of like listen to every writer, how they do things, and you think, I need to do it like that, I need to do it like that, I need to do it like that. You've got to find your own way that works. I review as I go along. Some people hate doing that. They'll whack down a first draft and then go back. And I have got faster. And as I say, I do less detailed planning now than I did initially, because I've got more faith, I suppose, in knowing that I will know where I'm going with the story, as long as I've got the key points and I know what the key plot points are. And anyway, no matter how much you plan, it will change. I know people say, oh, it's rubbish that characters will take on their own lives and do their own thing, but they do. Things just come as you're writing. You'll suddenly be surprised that actually something crops up that you didn't think, you would never have thought you were going to put into the book, but you just do. And I think it's about learning to just go with that flow and let the book do its thing. And then once you have done that first draft, just stepping back a while and then going back over it. I kind of view it like layering an onion a bit. My first book, Islands, took me several years to write because I wrote a first draft, completely rewrote it and juggled it around, then put it away again, and then got it out the bottom drawer again, then completely rewrote it again. And finally, kind of like after about another million edits, I felt like it was ready. But it was, for me, it was like every book is like layering an onion. So it's almost like you put down the plot points and the essential stuff first, and then I will then go back through and I will put in the kind of more of a detail, more of the elements, make sure that I've included all senses, that when you're reading it, you can see things and hear things and smell things. So it comes alive to the reader, what's going on the pages, really.
I liked how you've described that. I think there's a scene, there's sort of times in the in Preacher Boy where you talk about particular scents on things, and you find yourself when you're reading it thinking, oh, I wonder if they've been here or they've thought about it being in this place. And yeah, that was really it was a really different way of like dropping a clue in.
Great, good. I'm glad I'm glad it comes across. It's kind of like the trouble with when you're writing is you're so close to something, and it's very, very easy to write something and then think that everybody else will get it, whereas you actually need other people to read it. Well, I mean, that's what the job of the editor is. The editor will go through and say, what are you going on about here? You haven't mentioned that before, or whatever. So it's absolutely essential that you kind of have a really fresh pair of eyes that go over things and look through, because no matter how much you try to edit yourself, there will always be stuff that you'll miss. We all know when we write stuff, you'll because you know what you're saying, you'll miss that word which is misspelt because or missed out even because you know what that sentence should say.
So Sam's got a question that she asked a lot that said that lots of authors say they've got like a first book that'll never see the light of day. You're kind of hidden in a drawer somewhere. Have you got a first thing you were working on? Oh, I think I've lost Gwyn. I think she's frozen. Let's see if I can update her. Oh, no, she's gone. Well, she's gone. Sam, are you laughing at my opinion about babies? Is that why it says ha 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 Caroline? And well, she's gone and we wait for her to come back. Preacher Boy, Leslie, if you're watching, I gave it like 4.5 stars. It's a really good read. If you like something a little bit, she's gone for wine. She could have gone for wine, yeah. It's a sound plan. I could do with topping up my drink after having a gap without an author. But yeah, no, her book is, I think it's interesting to have the opinion of someone who is not a police person as a main character. So Harrison's got a really different kind of perspective on things, which makes it for a refreshing read. Hi.
I'm still here. I'm still here. I was chatting away quite happily to myself, so.
Yeah, you froze.
Did I?
Yeah, completely.
Sorry about that, everybody. It's actually very warm, so I don't know how I froze.
Yeah, don't know what happened there. So I just waffled on for a bit about your book while you were gone.
Thank you.
And came back. Yeah, so I was asking you, Sam says there's like a first book.
Yes.
In the drawer. Do you have one of those?
I do have one of those. So I wrote my first novella when I was 14. So that will never see the light of day. That was done on a typewriter. Shows you how old I am. And then I wrote several books afterwards. Although actually, having said that, Lonely Hearts was a complete redo and rewrite of an original book I wrote, where the police detective was originally male and the story was very different. So I have certain people living in my head, which I have started writing in the past, who will not leave my head, and I will have to at some point probably bring them out in different ways. So although I certainly do have plenty of things that were written and will never be published as they were. Some of the characters won't leave me, and I'll have to do them justice before they'll leave me alone.
Kelly said that I did great waffle well. Kelly, it's a teaching talent, the ability to waffle on and pretend you know what you're talking about.
You do very well.
It's 99% of teaching, just pretending you know what you're talking about, hoping for the best.
Now, as a parent, that risk is really worrying.
It's one of those secrets that shouldn't come out, really. Kelly says she's your friend and loves your writing, but she adored Preacher Boy and Harrison Lane. Right on her sweet spot as a reader. She read it in one session. Yeah, to be honest, I started reading it. I was reading about 5 other things, and I just spent one evening and read it in an evening.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Well, that's always good that people want to carry on reading. The worst thing anybody can do is like put the book down and think, yeah, can't be bothered.
And apparently Harrison was originally a script.
It was. Yes, that's right. Thank you. Yeah, he was. So I spent, because I worked in TV for so long as a journalist, I kind of thought, well, why don't I do TV script writing? And I had loads of TV drama ideas. And so Harrison was originally a TV drama idea. And I spent years learning to do script writing. I won some competitions. I kind of went to loads of conferences, did loads of stuff. And I kept seeing people who I knew had really great success as TV writers, just not getting any work and struggling even to get agents and blah, blah, blah. And I thought, do you know what? It's a mug's game. I'm going to go back to something where I can have control of what I'm writing and what I'm doing, and that's why I went back to books. I've frozen again, haven't I?
No, I'm laughing at the.
I've frozen.
I'm laughing at the comments that have come up. So David Monaghan Jones, whose question I'm going to ask you next, has said that he's really enjoyed the first half of the chat. But he has to head out soon. He's going to buy some blonde hair dye, white wine, and waffles.
Waffles as well. Oh. Sounds great.
He wanted to ask, have you ever done any investigative journalism?
Not in too in depth, no, because I was broadcast. I was actually more of a on screen person, so it kind of doesn't work with investigative journalism because people recognize you. So no, so I mostly because I was a newsreader with ITN and the BBC for a while, and I did business journalism, I did news journalism, and I also I've done radio, I've done magazines, I've done newspapers, I've done all sorts. But yeah, no, investigative journalism doesn't quite work when you're a broadcast reporter and presenter, unfortunately.
And Leslie wants to know how your book sits on the cozy to gory scale.
Well, that's an interesting one because I wrote a book called, well, I'm just trying to remember it, which is, I've taken it out of sale at the moment, which is called The Villagers, which I wrote when I was a lot younger. Talking about the books that you wrote that you've got in your bottom drawer, I wrote that when I was at ITN actually, and it was again, it's devil worshipping. I must have a thing about devils. It was actually prompted by a vicar who told me a story, and so kind of loosely based on truth, but I read it again a few years ago, and I was absolutely shocked. I thought, oh my God, I wrote that. It's full of sex and all sorts of things going on. And I killed a dog. So I've rewritten that completely. And all my books are very tame, I would say. Preacher Boy features a dead boy. That's the first chapter, is a dead boy, but there's no gore. There's no kind of unnecessary gore. I don't do any of the violent killings, so it's definitely down towards the cozy end as opposed to the kind of violent end. I don't know if that's an age thing. Maybe once you've had kids, I don't know. You kind of like step away from that stuff. But I prefer not to read too much blood and gore myself now, and I guess that's what I write.
I think it's not super cozy.
No, it's kind of on the softer end of crime.
Yeah. This might also be because it did like scare me slightly.
Well, Preacher Boy.
No, I think I'm having flashbacks back to
You're going back to Home Help.
Yeah.
There's nothing particularly gory apart from the description of snakes. Dare I mention snakes?
They're not gory, but I think they're quite sort of graphically described. They're not necessarily graphically described because it's how the character works.
Yeah.
But I think if you were sort of wanting a super cozy crime, you probably wouldn't.
No, it's not cozy. No, and I have a cozy series that I'm hoping to write to come out next year, which is much tamer, much more cozy-fied. So yeah, no, it's not cozy, but it's the softer end of the crime fiction world, I would say.
Yeah.
My writing is very tends to be more emotional, I think, than some crime writing, which is more, I guess, I don't know, that's what I think.
Well, I think I picked up on something you were saying earlier, and I think the thing that sort of made your writing stand out for me is what you were saying about trying to show all of the senses in it. So I think maybe what makes sort of the description of the crime scenes more graphic is that sort of bringing in of all of the senses. So you're really transported into it. because you talk about the smells and the sights and the sounds and the
and I think that's really important, because for me as a reader, I want to be transported into that story. I want to see what the characters are seeing and be where the characters are. I think for me that's really important. I think, you know, any good book does that for you, really, because it takes you into a world away from whichever world you're sitting in. So you could be sitting anywhere. You could be sitting in an airport or on your bed or you know, on the beach. But when you're reading that book, you need to be in that world that those characters are inhabiting. And so it's really important that you can visualize that in your own head. One of the things that actually I haven't mentioned, which is really important about Harrison. So for me personally, Harrison is Tom Hardy, and he's also for Kelly Clayton, who was here chatting, is also Tom Hardy. But I wanted to make Harrison everybody's hero. So although I know I describe him as muscly, which you have mentioned, Caroline, although I do describe him as muscly, I never describe him in detail, and I never describe his skin color. He's got brown eyes and black hair. He can be any nationality. So his mother is white, Caucasian, but we don't know who his father is. So I wanted Harrison to be everybody's hero. I wanted him to be, he could be mixed, and that was really important for me, that I wanted, because I know when I've read a book that, you know, the series with, oh God, what's it, the vampire series? What's the vampire series?
Twilight.
What's his name?
Twilight,
thank you. Now, I read Twilight, and I absolutely had characters in my head, how I saw them in my head. And I'm sure everybody does when they read a book. You visualize the characters in your own head. And then when it got turned into a movie, I was so disappointed. It kind of ruined it for me. So I want people to visualize Harrison as whoever they want him to be, without going into too much detail about exactly what he looks like, apart from muscly.
And broody.
Yes. I don't have to say the word broody. Can I just hasten to add?
But that's my word then. He's quiet and sort of moody.
Yeah, he's not grumpy.
Sort of moody.
Yeah, he's not grumpy, but he's not on the spectrum or anything, but he's not great at social skills. He's very focused, very, very focused. That's what his thing is. He's a very focused personality.
Yeah, I would agree. So we've talked about research and things, which I think is probably super important.
I do a lot of research, yeah.
That series more than anything. Is there kind of an expert you would like to know help research those that you don't already know?
A shout out to Graham Bartlett, because he read through the first draft of Preacher Boy for me and made some comments about the actual police side of things, because I didn't want to be way off the mark. So, you know, things like changed Jack Salter's rank and stuff like that. So he helped me with that. So there are people like Graham Bartlett, who are police advisors, who are excellent at helping writers out with getting the kind of real policing stuff. Experts, I don't know. There's so many, because I would love to talk to someone. The big problem when you're writing a book and you start researching something is you just end up going down so many rabbit holes, because you start researching a topic and it just leads you here, there, everywhere. And then all of a sudden you're watching these videos, then you've ordered about 3 books off the internet. You got a whole load of kind of academic papers that you need to read and stuff like that. There are so many ways that you can end up suddenly going into so many different places. And I've got a big dump folder for Harrison ideas of stuff that I found, which I thought, oh, that would be really good for another story, which isn't quite right for that one. So I think with Harrison, there are so many different aspects, and I want to try and make each story slightly different and cover different things. So for The Horseman, as I say, it's more about folklore. And there's some amazing experts on folklore in the UK, and I've read the books and looked at the research papers, and that's the best way to get that information. And then for the one I'm doing at the moment, Dark Order, it's much more about sorority clubs and stuff in the United States and the Hellfire Club and things like that, which are all feeding into it.
So not an expert that you'd like to speak to?
I don't know one expert, no. There's so much. There's lots of things. I mean, I'd quite like to go on a tracking course. I'd love to do that. There's some amazing tracking courses in America which you can do. So I think once life returns to some semblance of absolute normality, then maybe I'll be able to go off and do more and do some more research in that way. But so I'd love to do a tracking course. That would be kind of one thing I'd like to do, and talk to a tracking expert and one of the Native Americans who believe in that whole spirituality of it.
Kelly says that you could go together.
Yes. Well, we've often talked about going on a writer's retreat. Our writing retreat, unfortunately, hasn't happened due to various different things. So that would be brilliant.
Leslie said, "What's a tracking course?"
Oh, on tracking. So, so Leslie, Harrison, if you missed it, is a tracker. So he learnt to track signs through his stepfather, who is a Native American. He's one of the shadow wolves in America who works with the drug enforcement agencies, and basically you can look at the ground and you can see who has walked past, in what direction, carrying what weight, all sorts of things that they can see just by looking at the ground, by leaves, by twigs, by bushes, etc., like that, and animals, of course. With Harrison, it's all about people because it's about human crimes, but of course trackers can also track animals as well.
Leslie, further up the stream, is channeling one of my favourite books and asking if Harrison is a bit Heathcliff-like.
Sorry, say that again?
She's channeling one of my favourite books and asking if Harrison's a bit Heathcliff-like.
Heathcliff?
I don't think he's that miserable.
No, he's not Heathcliff. No.
I mean,
he's not miserable. He's just very focused and passionate. He's intensely under control. That's what he is. He's afraid of relationships. He's afraid of he won't drink. He has had there's history about drinking and stuff in the past, but that will come out. But he absolutely has to stay in control, because he believes that's the only way that he will be able to track down his mother's killers, and the only way he can help victims of crimes is to be absolutely in control of every sense, which is why he is the way he is. It's not because he's miserable, it's because he's just absolutely focused and driven.
Yeah, and I think that comes across really clearly in the book, and that's what he's like.
Yeah.
Sam wants to know, what's the most unusual thing you've had to research?
Ooh. There have been some weird things. What did I don't know off the top of my head. I have to think about that one. There were some weird things I was researching. It's incredibly difficult because I was researching about killing people and the methods of killing people and methods of death. And I remember that shortly afterwards, LinkedIn told me that the local police officer who looks into sort of dodgy crimes had been looking at my profile, and I kind of thought, oops, have they been picking me up on the internet with all my searches? Because the amount of weird searches I do, you would not believe. So some of the stuff's really hard. Like, I've got a book behind me which is about shaman, and it's real extreme stuff, which I won't put into a Harrison book because it is too extreme. I want to use some of elements of it, but it's something that will actually turn your stomach when you're researching it. So you have to be careful kind of what you're looking at and stuff. So there's some really, I mean, especially with folklore and the the horsemen. I've never heard of toadmen before researching this, and if you've never heard of toadmen, then you're going to have to read the horsemen to find out all about it. But so that was a lot of interesting research, looking into all of that, and the kind of historic beliefs that we had in the UK, and the different societies, and it makes you realize how fractured society was. It had its own pockets of different areas around the UK. So it's really interesting. And I've ended up joining the churches, the Saving Historic Churches group, Churches Conservation Trust, because they do some amazingly interesting free lectures, if anybody wants to watch them, all about different aspects of religions and churches and all stuff like that. So I can recommend it. It's called the Churches Conservation Trust. If you look them up on Facebook, they have these Thursday lunchtime lectures which are free, which are really interesting and kind of, again, lead me down rabbit holes, because they'll talk about something and all of a sudden I'll have to go off and research that.
Nice. Sounds interesting.
It is.
Your research just fascinates me.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, but that's the problem. You can spend so long researching. You have to be quite strict with yourself, because I tend to just get interested in it, and I have to stop myself and go, whoa, hang on a second, you won't be needing this much detail in the book. You've got to hold back and kind of just stop reading it out of interest, but start just reading purely for what Harrison needs, really.
There was a question further up the stream about whether you and the other blonde plotters would write together.
Write together. Yeah, we talked about that. We've talked about at one point I think we were trying to kill somebody's boss off at one point, but we talked about writing a book where we were 3 different characters in the same novel. We were going to all interact together. So I never say never. We're all so incredibly busy at the moment. It's hard, but life is a open book. We shall, I'm sure, talk about it again soon. I mean, we've been a bit curtailed because we used to meet up so regularly. We met up last weekend actually, but we had the husbands in tow, so it wasn't quite so easy to talk about books, unfortunately. But we meet up regularly and just talk non-stop about books and Tom Hardy and stuff like that, and it's just great.
Nice. Kelly is saying that you even got the plot.
Yeah, we did. We knew exactly what we were going to do to him. We should do it sometime, Kelly.
I'm 100% behind this.
Great.
Needs to happen. That needs to happen. And the second book of the Fortune's Hostage series needs to happen.
Yes.
While you're watching this. And I have an author chat with you coming up as well, and I'm going to hassle you in there about it too.
Good. We hassle her all the time.
Yeah. I'm going to join in.
Good. Please do.
So many more of them. She says she's on it.
She is.
Apparently, you're going to watch Tom Hardy video clips.
Yeah, we used to, when we were doing My VLF, before every single meeting, it kind of used to be like our stop, before, breathe, and we used to put Tom Hardy up from, God, my brain's completely gone. What's the thing that he used to be? And he says, I have a use for you. That's that clip. Do you know the one I mean? From Taboo, where he sits in the prison and he goes, I have a use for you. And that's all we need, really.
So you interviewed some amazing people on My VLF. You had some the amazing, the sort of all kinds of authors. Do you have a favorite interview that you've done?
One of the nicest guys. Who was the nicest guy? Was there's a couple. I mean, to be honest with you, there were very, very few who were not just absolutely lovely and really generous with their time and really nice. And yes, we did some huge authors. Do I have a favorite? Probably not. There's probably loads of them, but it cost us a blooming fortune because after interviewing them and listening to them, we then have to go off and buy their books. So it was like we used to end up going, oh my god, how much does this one cost us? Because you just end up wanting to buy all the books that you listen to and hear about. So I'm also not a one genre person. I read all sorts of stuff. So yeah, there's a lot.
I'm nodding along with you. I like to read two genres.
Yeah, good.
We read something for every author chat we do, so I'm feeling your pain about buying all the books as well.
Yeah, well, I sent you Preacher Boy, so that's good. It saved you some money. And I'm also supposed to announce the winner of this competition as well.
Oh yeah.
Yes. So the competition was for the afternoon tea, which looked absolutely lush. And it was really hard because there was like 300 and 400 comments, so it's really difficult. And I'm so sorry I can't buy afternoon tea for everybody. Wouldn't that be amazing? We could all meet for afternoon tea somewhere and just talk about books. So the main prize winner, which was chosen randomly, so names of everybody who had properly complied were put in and a random number was chosen, is Judith Coote.
Nice.
So I shall be letting Judith Coote know that she's the main prize winner. And then there's 50 other people who can get a free ebook of Preacher Boy, which I can put up in the group afterwards. They just need to contact me and I'll send them the ebook link to read Preacher Boy as well.
Yeah, do that. You have my permission.
Thank you.
To post the things. Leslie says, lucky Judith. Sam says there are worse reasons to have an empty bank. This is true. I don't actually object to buying all the books. I
know. Well, it's like, you hear these women who like to buy shoes or handbags or something else, I just can't walk past the Waterstones. And if you go in, you can't just buy one. You've got to get the 3 for 2 deal, haven't you? So
no, I
just always end up getting a ton of books.
My husband's just like, you could smoke. He's like, at least it's healthier.
Exactly, yeah. And when the apocalypse comes, you can just use them as fuel.
Do you know what? While we were in lockdown, because he's got this joke as my husband that if I'm away from books for more than about 10 minutes, I would start chewing the furniture. And I was like, are you not glad that I have a large pile of books at home? Because what would have happened if there was lockdown and I had no books?
Yeah, exactly.
Live with me. I was like, see, this is why I've got like my books at home.
Because otherwise there may have been a murder mystery in your own house.
Exactly. So I spent the entire lockdown, like the first and second ones, aren't you glad I've got a really big pile of books?
And it was so hard because you couldn't, because Amazon stopped shipping a lot of paperback books. So people who like paperbacks struggled because they just were prioritizing other products like toilet roll, for example. I suppose you could use them for toilet roll if you really needed to. There's all sorts of things you can do with books if you absolutely have to.
Yeah.
Once you've read them, of course.
For the chat. So Deborah has just said hi.
Hi, Deborah.
We've got all the blonde plotters here.
Yay! The girls are here.
Right at the end. And I think there's been quite a discussion about Tom Hardy as well. So I'm going to ask you one last question and then we'll have a recap of your books because we've got about 2 minutes left. But Sam asked a really good one when you were talking about writing together with the other two.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you think the writing would work with multiple authors? She's intrigued.
It would be interesting, but I'm sure we could work it out because we're all experienced enough now at writing. Because what we would do, we would obviously discuss the plot and where we're going with the story beforehand, so we had an idea, and then each of the characters would feed into that story. So it would work in that way, I hope. So, but I'm sure we would.
Kind of written your own selves in.
Yeah, because each character, because you want each character to be different anyway. So we would have to write it from three different characters' point of views. That was our plan anyway. My VLF kind of took that one out of the equation because we were just too busy with doing that. So maybe Debs and Kelly, we can revisit that one soon.
Yeah, please do. And Sam says the same thing as I was just thinking. Sounds fab, I'll buy it.
Thank you.
Okay. And Kelly says, oh blast, now I want to do it.
Jolly good. Well, why not, eh? We like a challenge.
And Deborah said we could still do it.
Yeah, there's no reason why we can't do it.
A minute left. Just remind us a little bit about Preacher Boy. Tell us when Horseman's coming out.
Preacher Boy is out now. It's about it's introducing Harrison Lane, the psychologist with a difference, who, as we talked about, is a tracker. Has got a massive backstory to him, but he's a character who is unusual and not your usual police detective, but he works with a couple of detectives. And the Horseman it's got a band across it, which is the author copy, not for resale. That is coming out in 10 days' time. Saturday the 19th. So that will be out, and that one is basically about a body that's found on the Cambridgeshire Fens with horses standing guard over it, and Harrison has to work out what's going on there, plus lots of other stuff as well. So that's the first two in the series, and then the third in the series, which is Dark Order, which I'm just finishing off now, is coming out in July.
Great. Final question. Kelly says, when can she read the third one?
Give us a blooming chance, woman. Almost there. I'm getting there. And as soon as it's ready, you can read it, Kelly, I promise.
Pam says thank you for her copy of Preacher Boy.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. I hope she enjoys reading it.
I'm sure she will. And when the Horseman comes out, pop a post in the group again and tag me, saying as I've
Thank you.
Just to remind us to go and buy it, because I need to know what happens next.
Thank you. Yes, well, lots and lots will happen, I can tell you. I promise you that one.
And thanks so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me. And just perfect timing because I've run out of wine.
Oh, see, I knew you want to end as well.